Your next guest is one of the leading power deal makers in the world. His Energy Capital Partners, a leading investor in Calpine, which was sold earlier this year to Constellation Energy, more than $26 billion, including debt. Doug Kimmelman is founder and now executive chair of Energy Capital Partners, ECP, and joins us now. Doug, it's great to have you on set.
Thanks, Frank. Good to be back.
43 years in this business. Did you ever think we'd get to this point where power has now become really the hottest commodity in the world?
Finally exciting. I always use the word reliability, right? The world doesn't function, the economy doesn't function, industries doesn't function without it. But now all of a sudden, critical to growth in the U.S. is AI, and no electricity, no AI. So we're in the hot seat right now.
How stiff is the competition? If you were to own a power plant right now that was not contracted to send its electricity to a utility, how much attention would that power plant owner be getting right now?
Enormous, but it's not like we have a lot of excess megawatts out there to throw over at the AI. We've got to deal with the consumer first and foremost, and reliability. So really, we're going to be talking about additionality, new megawatts, rather than taking extra off of the grid to supply the.
I assume? Listen, electricity costs tend to go up. Everything tends to go up over time. It's called inflation. But will electricity costs around the country go up far faster than inflation in years to come?
Well, let's talk about electricity prices. We're in New Jersey. We got a gubernatorial race. They're arguing about whose fault is it that electricity prices are going up so much. What people don't realize, here in New Jersey, public service electric and gas, they serve maybe 75% of the state. Roughly 30% of your bill is power generation. 20% are taxes, all sorts of policy things, add-ons. No one knows what all those little pieces are. But 50% of it is transmission and distribution. There has been massive spending over the last 15 years on transmission and distribution. Remember, we had Superstorm Sandy, and the mindset was that every Thursday we're going to have another hurricane. So public service electric and gas has put in probably 20 to 30 billion already. The next 5 years, another 30 billion. That is now showing up in rates. We've had an increase just on the transmission side, about 300% increase over the last 15 years.
How much of that is because politicians everywhere ignored it for years, because if it wasn't their immediate problem, they didn't want to say, I'm going to raise rates, so they ignored it. Now, in many places, I think we've got power lines 60, 75 years old. They're critically old. They're falling over, a high wind, boom, they're down, maybe a fire. I feel like we're at this inflection point.
Yeah, look, it's not just that. Renewables are in remote locations, right? It's windy and sunny out in the desert, not necessarily where people live. You need thousands of miles of transmission lines. That's very expensive. That goes into rates. And so when you put that into the equation and those increases, power generation over the last 15 years actually has gone down maybe 40 or 50% in terms of the price. But going forward, obviously, it's going to have to be additionality. We can't do that to the retail consumer to just say we're going to take it from the grid. So
when Doug Kimmelman, and I'm referring to you in the third person, when Doug Kimmelman is watching CNBC and hears that OpenAI is saying, we're going to do a 10 gigawatt deal over here, we're going to do a 5 gigawatt deal over here. By the way, this is the equivalent, as I've said to our viewers, of millions of homes worth of power just being handed out like candy, right? 10 megawatt, you get a megawatt, and you get a gigawatt, and you get 10 gigawatts. What are you thinking? Is that power production going to be there?
Well, it's massive of the needs. Let's just go through the math a little bit. The U.S. has about 1,200 gigawatts of power generation capacity, 1.2 million megawatts, if you want to put it in megawatts. Data centers right now are about 2% of that, so maybe 25 gigawatts.
Okay.
And we're talking about going to 10% of electricity needed for that. So
five-fold increase.
Yeah, so maybe another 100 gigawatts or so. But the big one we're forgetting, right now we're about 40% of our power comes from...
100 gigawatts is effectively the state of California being added to the grid.
Yeah, but I'm going to give you two more to almost triple that. We're nuclear and coal. We used to be 70% of our power came from that. We're down to 40%. It's still shrinking. They're old as well. Maybe 150 gigawatts could be lost, right? And then on top of that, we're talking about AI demand. You're forgetting a whole bunch of pieces of demand. LNG export, highly electricity intensive, right? We've got to refrigerate that gas, liquefy it to send it off. Cryptocurrency mining in Texas, the electricity load for crypto is bigger than the entire city of Houston. Onshoring of manufacturing. Obviously, we have that under the president, a lot of it electricity intensive. And, we can put in the equation if we want, on all of that, not just the crypto mining.
There are no new